Emily Parker grew up in the serene town of Maplewood, Ohio. Her parents, Richard and Parker, were well-respected figures in their community. Richard ran a local hardware store, while Anne worked as a nurse at the nearby hospital. Emily, the middle child between her older brother Jack and younger sister Sarah, was adored by her parents from a young age. From early on, Emily had a vibrant zest for life. She was a standout student, excelling in her studies and engaging in various extracurricular activities. Her interest in teaching sparked during high school, inspired by a history teacher who made the past come alive. Emily pursued her passion by attending Ohio State University, where she earned a degree in education. After graduating, Emily returned to Maplewood and secured a teaching job at the local elementary school. Her dedication to her students was exceptional. She often stayed late to assist with after-school programs and tutored struggling students on weekends. Her colleagues admired her enthusiasm, and many parents specifically requested her for their children's classes. Outside of work, Emily had diverse interests. She enjoyed hiking, photography, and reading historical novels. Her weekends were often spent exploring nature trails or relaxing with a good book. Friends described her as warm, compassionate, and always willing to help others. Emily met David Reynolds at a friend's wedding. David, a charming financial consultant from New York City, was visiting for the event. The connection between them was immediate, and their whirlwind romance surprised everyone. David showered Emily with attention, lavish gifts, and exotic trips. Their courtship, though brief, was intense, and within a year, David proposed. Emily, enchanted by his charisma and the allure of a glamorous life, accepted his proposal. Emily's family and friends had mixed feelings about the swift engagement. While they wanted to support her happiness, they couldn't shake off a sense of unease about David. His impeccable dress, luxury cars, and stays in upscale hotels seemed out of place with his modest background. Despite their concerns, Emily was smitten and reassured everyone that David was her soulmate. Their wedding was a grand affair held at a picturesque vineyard, attended by over 200 guests. Friends from Maplewood mingled with David's New York associates under fairy lights, celebrating the couple's union. As the newlyweds departed for their honeymoon in St. Lucia, no one could have foreseen the dark turn their love story would take. David Reynolds grew up in Queens, New York. His parents, Thomas and Margaret Reynolds, struggled financially. Thomas worked as a mechanic, while Margaret took on various part-time jobs to support their 3 children. As the eldest, David was driven to escape the financial difficulties of his upbringing. From a young age, David showed a talent for numbers and a keen understanding of money. He excelled in school, earning a scholarship to New York University where he studied finance. His ambition was evident. He spent college networking and securing internships at prestigious firms. His relentless work ethic paid off, and after graduation he secured a position at a top financial consultancy. David quickly advanced in his career, earning a reputation as a rising star due to his talent in investment strategies and financial planning. His success allowed him to live the lifestyle he had always dreamed of: designer suits, high-end cars, and a luxury apartment in Manhattan. However, his professional success masked deeper issues. Colleagues described David as charming but ruthless, willing to bend the rules to achieve his goals. David's personal life was complex as well. His charm attracted many women, but his relationships were often short-lived. He had several high-profile romances, each ending abruptly amidst rumors of infidelity and deceit. Despite this, he maintained a polished public image, carefully curating his social media to portray a life of sophistication and success. When David met Emily Parker, she represented something different. Her genuine warmth and small-town innocence were a stark contrast to the superficial relationships he was used to. To his friends, it seemed David was genuinely in love for the first time. However, as their relationship progressed, cracks began to show. David's financial empire was not as solid as it appeared. Behind the scenes, he was entangled in risky investments and mounting debts, which he kept hidden from Emily. David's extravagant spending habits compounded his financial troubles. He presented only the image of a successful and devoted partner to Emily, and his decision to propose was as much about securing a future with her as it was about finding stability amid his growing financial chaos. Their wedding, while joyous, also marked the beginning of David's deceptions catching up with him. St. Lucia, with its lush landscapes and serene beaches, was the perfect backdrop for David and Emily's honeymoon. They stayed at an exclusive resort, with their bungalow perched on the edge of a secluded cove. The first few days were filled with romantic dinners, sunset walks, and island excursions. Emily shared their adventures on social media, her posts full of joy and excitement. On the night of Emily's disappearance, the couple dined at the resort's beachfront restaurant. The atmosphere was idyllic, with soft music playing and tiki torches flickering in the gentle breeze. Fellow diners observed the couple laughing and holding hands, seemingly in love. The staff, accustomed to honeymooners, paid them little special attention. After dinner, David suggested a moonlit walk along the beach. Emily, always a romantic, eagerly agreed. They strolled along the water's edge, their conversation mingling with the sound of the waves. David later claimed that Emily wanted to take a swim. She removed her sandals and waded into the water, illuminated by the moonlight. According to David, he went back to their bungalow to fetch a jacket for Emily. When he returned, she was gone. Panic set in as David searched the beach, calling her name. He alerted the resort staff, who joined the search, but Emily was nowhere to be found. David's distress appeared genuine as he spoke with the resort manager, his voice breaking and hands trembling. The next morning, local police were notified and began an immediate investigation. They questioned resort staff and guests, conducted underwater searches, and used sniffer dogs to track any scent that might lead to Emily. Despite their efforts, no clues emerged. The beach was scoured for personal items, but nothing was found. As hours turned into days, David's behavior began to attract scrutiny. Although he seemed genuinely distraught, there were moments when his composure appeared forced. The police noted his detailed recounting of events, which seemed rehearsed. Resort staff mentioned David's insistence on calling his lawyer soon after Emily's disappearance, which struck them as unusual. Witnesses provided conflicting accounts. Some reported seeing the couple argue earlier in the day, while others saw them as affectionate. A few guests reported hearing raised voices from their bungalow the night before Emily vanished. The police were left with an inconsistent mix of evidence and testimonies about the couple's final hours together. As the investigation stalled, David's narrative was the only available story. His plea for information was broadcast on news networks, his tearful face becoming the public image of a grieving husband. However, behind the scenes, Detective Hayes was piecing together a different story, one that hinted at a more sinister truth. Detective Hayes arrived at the resort, greeted by the tropical heat and tourists enjoying their vacations, seemingly unaware of the unfolding drama. Hayes's first step was to interview David Reynolds. Observing David's demeanor closely, Hayes noted that while David appeared genuinely distraught, there was an underlying tension. David recounted the events of the night Emily disappeared, his voice steady but his eyes revealing anxiety. Hayes asked pointed questions about their activities, their relationship, and any reasons Emily might have had to leave suddenly. David's answers were consistent but seemed overly polished, as if rehearsed. The detective then spoke with resort staff and other guests. Accounts varied, some aligned with David's story, while others contradicted it. A waitress at the restaurant mentioned that David seemed agitated during dinner, frequently checking his phone. A couple staying in a neighboring bungalow reported hearing an argument late at night, though they couldn't make out the words. Hayes's team searched the couple's bungalow and the surrounding area, finding Emily's belongings neatly packed, her passport and wallet untouched, but her phone was missing. A thorough examination of the beach yielded no new clues, as the tide and weather likely washed away any trace evidence. As days passed, the investigation broadened. Hayes looked into David's background and discovered a man who was both successful and secretive. David's financial records revealed troubling patterns. Despite his high-paying job, he was deeply in debt, with large withdrawals suggesting a gambling problem and several failed investments. Hayes interviewed David's colleagues and friends in New York, uncovering a different side of him. They described David as charming but unreliable, with a penchant for risky ventures and a history of romantic entanglements. One anonymous colleague mentioned David's recent involvement in a work scandal, hinting at financial misconduct. The detectives' team also analyzed phone records and bank statements, uncovering a web of transactions that pointed to financial distress. Large transfers to offshore accounts and substantial loans taken out shortly before the wedding suggested that David was far from the affluent figure he portrayed. As suspicion around David grew, the investigation took a dramatic turn with the discovery of a letter in Emily's handwriting, hidden in her suitcase. The letter was addressed to her parents and hinted at her growing unease about David. She wrote about discovering discrepancies in his stories and financial dealings, expressing fear that she had made a terrible mistake in marrying him. With mounting evidence, Detective Hayes felt the pieces of the puzzle coming together. However, without Emily, the case remained frustratingly incomplete. Determined to uncover the truth, Hayes knew that the facade of the perfect honeymoon concealed something far more sinister. Once thought to be thriving, David Reynolds' life was crumbling under the weight of risky investments and substantial debt. As Detective Hayes delved deeper, he discovered that David had been involved in several questionable business ventures. One such venture was a failed real estate development in Florida, which had resulted in significant losses for investors. Another was a tech startup that went bankrupt, leaving David with substantial debts. These ventures, combined with his gambling habits, had drained his resources and left him in a precarious financial position. David's secret debts and business failures provided a possible motive for foul play regarding Emily's disappearance. Questions arose about potential life insurance policies or other financial benefits he might gain. Hayes' team found that David had recently taken out a substantial life insurance policy on Emily, which raised further suspicions. Testimonies from friends and colleagues about David's character began to form a consistent narrative. They described him as someone who would do anything to maintain his image of success, even if it meant deceiving those closest to him. It seemed that Emily had been drawn into a web of lies and financial manipulation. The mounting evidence suggested that David's involvement in Emily's disappearance was more than just circumstantial. His financial desperation, coupled with inconsistencies in his story, pointed to a more sinister motive. As the investigation continued, Detective Hayes knew that the key to solving the case lay in uncovering the full extent of David's deceit and the secrets he had worked so hard to conceal. As the investigation deepened, another layer of David Reynolds' double life began to unfold: his extramarital affairs. Detectives uncovered a series of clandestine relationships that painted a picture of a man far different from the devoted husband he appeared to be. David's phone records and emails revealed communications with several women, some of whom he had met through his business dealings, while others were casual encounters. These relationships ranged from fleeting flings to more serious entanglements. Detective Hayes and his team meticulously tracked down and interviewed these women, each conversation revealing more about David's deceptive nature. One of the women, Laura Mitchell, a marketing executive from New York, provided crucial insight. She described her relationship with David as passionate but tumultuous. They had met at a conference a year before his wedding, and their affair continued well into his engagement with Emily. Laura was unaware of David's upcoming marriage until she saw the wedding announcement on social media. Feeling betrayed, she ended their relationship but kept records of their communications, which she willingly shared with the investigators. Another woman, Jessica Evans, a real estate agent from Miami, had a similar story. She and David had met during one of his business trips, and their affair was marked by lavish gifts and extravagant promises. Jessica, too, was in the dark about David's marital status. She described him as attentive and affectionate but noted his tendency to vanish for days without explanation. The most damning testimony came from Rachel Turner, a colleague from his firm who had been involved with David for nearly 2 years. Rachel's account revealed a pattern of manipulation and deceit. She recounted how David had confided in her about his financial troubles, painting himself as a victim of unfortunate circumstances. Deeply infatuated with him, Rachel had even loaned him money on several occasions, believing his promises to repay her once his investments paid off. These revelations had a profound impact on the case. They not only established a pattern of deceit but also suggested potential motives for Emily's disappearance. David's affairs indicated a man capable of maintaining multiple lives, each carefully compartmentalized to prevent discovery. His ability to juggle these relationships while hiding his financial troubles from Emily spoke to his skill at deception. Interviews with his past lovers painted a picture of a man driven by a need for validation and material success. They described how David would often speak of his ambitions and dreams, using his charm to elicit sympathy and support. His relationships, both romantic and financial, were tools he used to navigate his increasingly precarious life. The impact of these revelations on the case was significant. They provided a motive for foul play, suggesting that David might have seen Emily as both an obstacle and a solution to his problems. With his financial empire collapsing and his web of lies unraveling, the pressure on David had reached a breaking point. Emily's disappearance and the subsequent focus on David threatened to expose his entire charade. As Detective Hayes pieced together the evidence, it became clear that the investigation was far from straightforward. Each new discovery added complexity to the case, revealing the depths of David's deceit and the lengths he was willing to go to maintain his facade. The true challenge lay in proving his involvement beyond doubt, a task that required uncovering every hidden aspect of his life. Just when Detective Hayes believed he had a clear picture of David Reynolds' involvement in Emily's disappearance, a shocking twist emerged. A mysterious figure, previously unknown to the investigation, came forward with information that turned the case on its head. The figure was a man named Alex Carter, a private investigator from New York. Alex contacted Detective Hayes, claiming to have crucial information about David Reynolds and his activities. Intrigued and cautious, Hayes arranged a meeting in a dimly lit cafe. Alex revealed his connection to the case. He explained that he had been hired by an anonymous client to investigate David Reynolds months before Emily's disappearance. His client had suspected David of financial misconduct and infidelity, and Alex's investigation had uncovered significant evidence of both. He had been tracking David's movements and communications, documenting his secret affairs and shady business dealings. But Alex's most startling revelation was about Emily. According to his findings, Emily had discovered David's infidelity and financial troubles shortly before their wedding. She had confided in a close friend, expressing her doubts and fears about marrying David. This friend, concerned for Emily's safety, had anonymously hired Alex to gather evidence, hoping to give Emily a way out of her situation. Alex provided Detective Hayes with a dossier of his findings, including photographs, financial records, and transcripts of conversations. One particularly damning piece of evidence was a recording of a conversation between David and an unknown associate, discussing plans that hinted at foul play. The recording suggested that David had been plotting something sinister, although the details were vague. This new information complicated the case significantly. It introduced the possibility that Emily might have been aware of David's plans and had taken steps to protect herself. Detective Hayes considered the idea that Emily could have staged her disappearance to escape David's clutches. Although the lack of concrete evidence made this theory difficult to prove, Hayes decided to re-interview everyone involved. Armed with the new information, he spoke again with Emily's family and friends, uncovering more details about her state of mind before the wedding. Emily's best friend, Lisa, revealed that Emily had been increasingly anxious in the weeks leading up to the honeymoon. She had confided in Lisa about her fears and mentioned the anonymous tipster who had warned her about David. David's reaction to the reopened investigation was one of surprise and agitation. He denied any involvement in Emily's disappearance and dismissed the evidence provided by Alex Carter as fabrications. However, his growing frustration and inconsistent statements only added to the suspicions surrounding him. The twist in the case forced Detective Hayes to consider all possibilities. He intensified the search for Emily, exploring the idea that she might have gone into hiding. The investigation expanded to include airports, border crossings, and potential safe houses. The media coverage, once focused solely on David, began to speculate about Emily's fate and her possible role in the unfolding drama. As the investigation continued, Detective Hayes faced mounting pressure to solve the case. The new information from Alex Carter provided valuable leads but also complicated the narrative, making it harder to distinguish between victim and perpetrator. Hayes knew that the truth lay somewhere within the tangled web of deceit and betrayal, and he was determined to unravel it. The investigation into Emily Parker's disappearance stretched on for months, with Detective Hayes and his team following every lead, no matter how tenuous. The case had become a national obsession, with the media closely monitoring every development. Public opinion was divided. Some believed David Reynolds was guilty of foul play, while others speculated that Emily had staged her own disappearance to escape a troubled marriage. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A hiker in a remote part of St. Lucia discovered a makeshift campsite hidden in the dense jungle. Among the belongings were items that matched the descriptions of Emily's possessions, including a distinctive bracelet she was known to wear. The discovery reignited the investigation, with search teams scouring the area for further clues. Eventually, they found Emily. She was alive but severely dehydrated and disoriented. Emily had indeed staged her disappearance, driven by fear and desperation after uncovering David's deceit and feeling trapped in the marriage. She had fled into the jungle intending to disappear entirely, but the harsh conditions had taken a toll on her health. Emily's rescue brought a mix of relief and outrage. While many were glad she was safe, questions about her actions and the trauma she endured dominated the public discourse. Detective Hayes interviewed Emily extensively, piecing together her story. She described the mounting pressure she felt after discovering David's infidelities and financial troubles. The anonymous tip from Alex Carter had been the final straw, prompting her to take drastic action. David Reynolds was arrested and charged with multiple crimes, including fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit harm. The evidence provided by Alex Carter, combined with Emily's testimony, built a strong case against him. During the trial, the full extent of David's deceit was laid bare. His financial empire had been a house of cards supported by lies and illegal activities. The jury found him guilty on all counts, and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. The aftermath of the case left lasting scars on everyone involved. Emily returned to Maplewood, where she began the long process of healing with the support of her family and friends. She became an advocate for domestic abuse victims, using her experience to help others in similar situations. Detective Hayes, meanwhile, continued his work, reflecting on the complexities of the case and the challenges of unraveling truth from deception. The story of Emily Parker and David Reynolds remained a cautionary tale about the perils of deceit and the importance of facing one's fears. It served as a reminder that even in the darkest times, the truth has a way of emerging and justice, though sometimes delayed, will ultimately prevail.